It's a very warm welcome to the Global Sports Channel today to Mr. Darren McCauley. Darren, how are you, mate?
I'm good, Mark. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. It feels like we've already done the show. I had a good chat to you before we got online today, and you were quite inquisitive about my lifestyle. What prepped your interest in sailboats?
Well, when I heard that you lived on a boat and you hardly use a phone, like I said to you earlier, it piqued my interest a lot. Um, I'm very happy by myself. I can isolate quite easily, often to my detriment. Um, so when I heard that you do that as well in a kind of more romantic way, I thought here's a man I need to talk to. Here's someone that will have a different mind, and when someone has a different mind, they do different things, and it's always good to know people like that.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I'm sure we're going to find out a lot about your different perspective on life and lots of things. We're going to talk a lot about football today. But before we get there, tell everyone in the world who's watching and listening today, whereabouts in the world are you at the moment?
So I'm in Melbourne, Australia, and I've been here for about a year now, coming from Ireland.
Right. And unfortunately, in Melbourne, it's been the lockdown capital of Australia during this COVID-19. How have you been dealing with that? Okay.
Look, it was definitely very difficult mentally. It was such a strange situation when the first lockdown happened. Walking through Melbourne, it was like a ghost town. Uh, Being isolated, being stuck in your home, and not having that option of going outside was was strange and new for everyone, including myself. So a lot of people weren't happy, and understandably so. I definitely struggled mentally. It was just the kind of siege mentality in your own home. It just wasn't good for people's mental health. Not having human connection face to face, which is something I think is necessary. It's great that we have technology to do things like this, but I don't think it's sufficient for for health. I think you do need a close face-to-face interaction
Mm.
now and again. I'm not saying all the time, but sometimes I think you just need that. It's more tangible than something over Zoom or any other network. Um, so it was difficult mentally. It was difficult financially, but I had a few friends who helped me out, and I continued to do some personal training online. And when the restrictions eased, I did some personal training in the park. So that kept me going. And I know a lot of footballers, a lot of Irish people who went home and didn't stick it out here. But that just wasn't an option for me. I didn't want to go back home, and I stuck it out. And now we're coming out of lockdown and trying to regain our life back.
Yeah, it's been a difficult process for many people. I understand that, and we've already heard your accent, so many people will already be able to tell that you're obviously from Ireland. And do you think it's been more difficult because you've been so far away from home?
Probably, yeah, I would say so. I would say so. Your home comforts and family support isn't there, but I've made so many friends in Melbourne that I feel as if I have a family here now. So it in that sense it hasn't been that drastic, but of course you like to have your home comforts and have people who know you. But I think the second day I arrived in Melbourne last year, it felt like home, and I've never had that before with any other place that I've traveled, and and so it has felt like home for me a couple of days since I stepped off the plane.
Mm,
So that always helps when you have that feeling.
mm.
Um, and I'm starting to develop my career here now. So that was another reason why I felt motivated to stay. But yes, it did cross my mind. It would be easier going back home, just get a flight and just get out of here and all that stuff. But now that you look at the situation in Europe, it's very bad, and in Ireland, it's also very bad. So I think even though it was difficult, I've got through that part, and I'm coming out the other side of it much better.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And, we've got to give a shout out to many people around the world at the moment who are struggling. A lot of people like yourself have been separated from their families, and that doesn't make it easy in this situation. So, one of the things that I do on my show, Darren, is I give my guests the opportunity to dedicate their show to someone special in their life. So, who would you like to dedicate your show to today?
I will dedicate it to my friend Emma Shaw. Emma's actually someone you would be interested in interviewing as well. She is an amazing person. She taught yoga. She was a very good yogi and still is. She was planning to run a marathon. She's a high-end, best nutritionist I've ever met. Um, Loves nutrition, loves health, and she has a heart condition, and she was living in Melbourne. It was one of the reasons why I came here was because Emma was here. She came down with a heart condition here in Melbourne, and she was studying her PhD in Monash, and so she was doing all this great stuff, and then she got this heart condition, and the heart condition affected the blood flow throughout her whole body. So she would end up having seizures. She would pass out. Um, she would go into fits. And so her mum came over, took care of her for a while, and then she had to fly back to Ireland. So now she is immobilized. She she can't walk at times. At times she's okay, but she does have a wheelchair, and she does take seizures from time to time. She is getting better. Her condition is managed, but that's who I would like to dedicate this show to because she is such a sweetheart. She's the nicest person in the world. She has a heart of gold, and she was just flying in life, and then suddenly this has happened, and now she's had to go home. So this show is dedicated to her.
Fantastic. Wonderful dedication. And Emma, I'm sure you're listening and watching this after Darren tells you about it. So shout out to you. And from all of my audience around the world, in over 103 countries we go to, Emma, we want to wish you all God's strength and everything to get back. And I'd love to see a photograph in the future of you, Emma, finishing your first marathon. And if you need any tips, reach out to me because I've run over 70 myself and I'm happy to help you out with some marathon tips. So lovely dedication. Thank you, Darren, for saying that. And let's talk about football. So it's been a major part of your life. I've done a bit of research on you. In fact, I've watched a few games that you played in, Darren, and I'm pretty impressed, mate, because I'm a New Zealander, so I'm an All Blacks fan. I'm hurting at the moment because we've just lost 2 matches in a row, which is unheard of when it comes to rugby and the All Blacks. But I'm a huge rugby fan, but I do have a soft spot for football. And having lived in Belgium for 12 years of my life, I became intimately connected to football across Europe and had the great pleasure and honour of going to some of the Champions League matches, which are just out of this world experiences. But let's talk about football in Ireland, and let's go back to the very beginning. What got you into football? How old were you when you started?
I started football around 7 or 8 years old. Most players nowadays start 3 or 4 years old, little camps and things. But I started around 8 years old, and it was just something I naturally took to. I have no real reason why. It was just an instinct that there's a ball, I have to chase it. It's not as philosophical as it needs to be. It's just something I instinctively need to do. And then growing up, I found a lot of peace in it. It was like it could be an escape for me as well. I enjoyed practicing. There was something uh, beautiful about kicking a ball against the wall, and you have a sense of control. You have a sense of you know what's going to happen next. So I think there's something in there as well that helped me. Um, so I started playing at 8 years old with my youth team and continued up the youth ranks. I had a mentor who passed away when I was 14. His name was Keith Oxyradi, and he was a huge influence on my career, and his death was also a huge influence on me as a person. And then I got a few trials with teams over in England around 17, and then eventually signed for Celtic as a youth player. Uh, and then I returned to Ireland, played for my hometown Derry City, played for a local team, Coleraine FC. Um, and then last year I signed for Inverness Caledonian Thistle in Scotland. And then I came home, and then I went to Australia, and here I am.
Okay, well, there's a long journey there, so we're going to dissect it a bit because I've got a lot of questions to ask you about that journey. So let's go back to when you were 8 years old and you started off in football. Which part of Ireland were you in at that stage?
I'm from Northern Ireland, so it's Derry City.
Derry
So
City. Okay.
yeah, Derry City. It's right on the border between the north and the south. And it's a city that's built on the River Foyle. It's like the fourth biggest city in Ireland, so it's fairly populated, but wouldn't be as multicultural as Belfast or Dublin.
Yeah, right. So, in terms of starting off, did you said your football became pretty natural to you, but were you not enticed at any stage to pick up the oblong ball or the rugby ball, or go down the hurling road as well and try a bit of hurling?
Never, never. I don't know why. Maybe the shape of those balls don't agree with my mindset, but I just had no interest at all in playing those sports. Look, I wasn't the most gifted kid, but I was very hardworking, very, very dedicated, and that's what got me far. There was a lot more kids who were much more talented than I was, but my work rate got me to progress. I played a little bit of Gaelic football during the summers, and that was good because it toughens you up a lot. It makes you more aggressive. It's a faster speed of play as well. The speed of Gaelic football can be a lot faster than soccer. Rugby, no interest. Hurling, no interest. But I could watch those sports. I enjoy watching those sports. And I enjoy watching Gaelic football. And since I've came to Australia, I enjoy watching the AFL now that I understand it.
Yeah.
But I always say to young kids, look, if you are a soccer player, don't be afraid to try different sports, because the speed of play, the bounce of the ball, the attitude, the personality of the people, it's very different, but it can benefit your play. For example, here in Melbourne, I would advise young soccer players to play a bit of footy, because it's more aggressive, it's more intense than what I've seen of the standard of soccer so far. So that's something I would advise players to definitely try and do. But stick to, have your sport that you want to be a master on. Yes, pick it and choose it, but dip your toe in once in a while in the other ones as well.
Did you have a football role model when you were a young kid, in terms of, was there someone you were watching on the television and you thought, I want to be just like him?
Yeah, Zidane.
Zidane, okay, yeah.
Yeah, yep, he was the man.
What a legend.
1998 World Cup.
Yep.
You remember the DVD players, or the big thick tapes?
Yep.
Yeah, and the cases. So yeah, I used to have those. So I would have been about 7 years of age then, and so I loved Zidane. A really elegant player. Just makes everything look so easy and graceful, and he's just light years ahead of anybody else on the pitch. Time stands still when he's on the ball. So there was Zidane, and there was the Brazilian Ronaldo as well.
Yeah.
1998 World Cup, he had those silver and blue Nike boots. He was terrorizing the Scottish defence. I can't remember the Scottish guy's name. He had blonde hair, thick blonde hair. He was a centre back, and Ronaldo was just turning him inside out. And so those two, when I watched that, again, instinctively driven to play football.
And I guess also to be a goal scorer, because you've just named two guys that were phenomenal at scoring goals from any position on the pitch, really. And was that something that came to mind after watching them, that you wanted to be the guy that was scoring the goals?
Yeah, I think so. You always, as a kid, you watch something on the TV, and then you get a ball, you go out onto the pitch, and you score a goal in your local park, and you imagine people calling your name and things like that. So goal scoring is definitely one of the best feelings in the world. And also, as my career developed, I realized that it was the most thing that I enjoyed. It was, and it's something that you're always chasing. And to be a goal scorer and to have that obsession, you almost need to be obsessed with the net and obsessed with scoring goals and shooting. And with that type of attitude, you'll help your team. It's selfish, but if you score goals, you're actually helping your team,
Yeah,
and and that's what you strive for on the pitch. It's all for those goals.
yeah. I used to be a kid running around the backyard kicking a rugby ball around, and the only person screaming out my name was my mother to tell me to come inside and dinner was ready. Yeah, that was
Mm.
the only thing I got out of that. So tell me, when you started playing in the youth leagues, and you're obviously a young tacker then. Did you have a dream to become a professional football player? Was the dream alive at that stage?
Yeah, yeah. The dream was alive at that stage,
Mm.
and it's something that when people ask you what are you going to be when you grow up, and you say professional footballer, they almost look at you like, no, what are you really going to be? What are you
Yeah,
going to be?
yeah,
You're going to be a lawyer, and it's like, no, this is my plan. But what's your backup plan? Have you got a backup plan? What do you fall back on? It's like, no, 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 no. There's no backup plan. There's no fallback. This is what I'm going to be.
yeah,
This is it. You can't, and that attitude of fear and and just you've failed before you've even began.
mm.
And that attitude is just given to children all the time. What's your plan B? What are you going to do properly? No, I'm going to be financially stable through my football. I'm going to be a professional player, and I'm going to show you why you should have believed in me.
Mm.
All these things are just implanted into a child at a very young age, and they just need to be uprooted because they're bullshit.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So what did your parents say when you first announced that you wanted to be a professional football player?
What did my parents say? They were happy. They just, look, do your own thing. I'm the youngest of seven children,
Wow.
so
Okay.
when your mum has seven kids, by the time she gets to the last one, she's tired. She's tired. She just wants at that stage. I think you just do whatever you want.
Right.
So I've always been independent in that sense, and had a strong mind. My dad, he's how would I say about him? He's he's a good man, but he has a lot of faults, and a lot of his faults are down to drinking alcohol. And alcohol is such a huge influence on young people in Ireland and throughout the culture.
Mm.
So look, he's a great worker, but he's too busy drinking
Right.
to
Right.
worry about his son.
Yeah. So with your siblings, was there a lot of family football going on? Was there games in the backyard with that many people? You almost had a team going there.
Yeah, no, we nearly had a starting 11, a few subs. No, they weren't. They were. My mum had three boys, but I have a brother that's 50, so she
Right.
had me quite late in her age.
Yep.
So I was a mistake for sure. But I always say they save the best till last.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, and so she had the three boys when she was in her early 20s. Then she had the three girls, and then she had me. So my brothers were all busy with their own families, right? They were at the stage where they were living their life. So it wasn't a big football like influence. But I will say, my brother John, he did take me to my first training session.
Yep.
So in that sense, he did influence that way. But then my sisters, because they were closer in age with me, and they weren't really that sporty, or that athletic. Then it was kind of just my own thing that I did.
Okay. Do you remember going to that first training session with John and having that experience? What did it feel like? Did it feel like you were naturally at home on the football field, or was there a little bit of anxiety there?
Yeah, anxiety, 100%. I remember like it was yesterday. Yeah, there was a fear and an anxiety about what's going to happen, who am I going to meet. Know that first training session when you're 7 or 8 years of age, it's daunting, and but I just knew it was the place for me, and I didn't even need to think about it, despite having the fear. It's the strange thing. It's very, very peculiar when you don't even think about doing something. You just automatic. It's so automatic. It's like breathing.
Mm.
Um, that it's the love of sport. It has to be, because if you didn't have that, then you wouldn't really be that competitive in it.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So what happened when you turned up to training? Were you the guy that put your hand up and said, "Hey, coach, put me in the forward line," or did you just let the coach put you where he wanted you?
Like during the games, you mean? During the games, I wasn't on the bench that often, which is a good thing. So I didn't really have to put up my hand and say, "Can you put me on?" But um, yeah, as a young kid, I think I was quite timid and shy. But eventually I came out of my shell, and yeah, you do at times. There's players on the bench, and they'll ask their manager, Mark, can you put me on? The innocence of a kid, you have no idea what's really happening. But yeah, you do ask those questions, and look, a lot of kids now, they don't get enough game time. A lot of the age groups, sometimes they prioritize the better players, which really shouldn't be the way it is. I think they should give each player equal game time up until a certain age, and I'm nearly sure that's what they do in Ajax, in the Dutch academy, which is one of the most prestigious academies in the world. They produce world class players, and I think up until the age of 15 they make sure that everyone has the exact same game time, which
Mm.
is really, it's a beautiful thing.
Mm. Although we're seeing it across a lot of sports at the moment, and with my beloved rugby, when it comes to world class matches, we're seeing coaches' strategy is actually playing this bench. A strong bench is a tactical and strategic emphasis, isn't it, in a lot of these games these days? The people that you bring off the bench at 60 or 70 minutes into a game, they can change the game immediately, can't they?
Absolutely. You don't win anything with having a good starting 11. You win leagues and you win cups with having a strong squad and having that real difficult competition to get into the starting 11. And then there's players who might be more suited to coming off the bench. They might be have that ability to make an impact. Whereas if you start them, maybe they don't have the same influence. So the coach also has to know his players and how they adapt to coming off the bench. But no, you're absolutely correct that having a strong bench, having a strong squad, each player fighting for a position to get in the team is vital.
Mm. So you turned professional when you were 17, is that right?
Yeah, yeah, 17.
That's young. So
Yeah.
how did you deal? Do you remember your first professional game? Who was that against?
Well, I played a friendly for Derry City against Celtic when I was 16, and I wasn't ready. I was shaking like a leaf. I remember I was, because Celtic are such a well-supported club in Ireland, and especially in Derry, my hometown. So when they came to play my hometown, the place was packed. There was like something like 8,000 people there. So for a 16-year-old,
Yeah.
and I was only on for 10 minutes, but I was shaking like a leaf, and then after that, I started training with the first team, and I signed professional with the first team at 17. And then I made my competitive debut at 17. So because I had that shaking like a leaf experience at 16, it meant that the 17 experience wasn't that bad. So that kind of broke me in
Yeah.
at a young age.
Yeah. So, what about when you did start off, as a regular startup at 17? Were there a lot of other kids around you of the same age, or were a lot of the team members a lot older than you?
No, they were a lot older. They were a lot older. Now, I wasn't a consistent starter at 17, but I made a couple of appearances here and there, which is still a good achievement for a 17-year-old. I was really flying at that stage. But the majority of the other players in the team, they were seasoned professionals. They had families. They had, uh, almost three, four, 500 career appearances under their belt. So it was a fantastic breeding ground and a fantastic learning environment for a young player, because when I went over to my trials then in England, I was just actually a step ahead of those players because they weren't training with men, whereas I was training with men back home and then going over and playing with 18-year-olds. So it gave me a step in the right direction. And Derry City, where I'm from, it's such a hotbed for football talent. It's unbelievable. And it produces a lot of good players. There's actually a player, Jordan McAniff. He's playing for Arsenal in the reserves right now, and I think he's going to make it. He's the best I've seen in a long while, but he's at Arsenal at the minute, and I think he's one to definitely watch out for.
Yeah, right. Okay. So when you turn professional, I'm assuming at the same time you were well and truly into looking after yourself in terms of nutrition and eating well and being healthy all round. Was that the case, or was it something you were still learning to evolve with in terms of how to look after yourself on and off the pitch?
No, it was not the case. No, absolutely not. I loved football, and I didn't really have a strong understanding of nutrition. I didn't have a strong understanding of strength and conditioning. It was more technique and being on the football pitch. Um, and then after around 17, I started drinking quite heavily, going on weekend binges like you do in Ireland as a 17-year-old. Um, and then I moved to Scotland. And that I actually, when I look back now, I was moving from Scotland to get away from to get away from the drink culture, and that uh, it was almost traumatic. It was a weird type of thing, the effect that had on me. But so drinking from a young age is just part and parcel of Irish culture. So I thought, right, I need to get away from this, and so football was kind of a way to get away from that, and that's why I went to Scotland.
Okay. Some of us listening who have visited Scotland on many occasions and Ireland would think that you were going from the frying pan into the fire when it comes to the drinking culture from Ireland to Scotland, but obviously it did you well.
Look, 100%. Both cultures are very similar. We both get on very well. Scottish people and Irish people always have the best of crack, as we say back home.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I went to Scotland and just like I isolated and I cut everyone off, and I just kept myself to myself and led a very clean, healthy lifestyle and things like that.
So 2010, you signed for Celtic in Scotland, a massive club, a club that's got a lot of history in football, and also singing too. Rod Stewart's a big fan of Celtic Football Club, isn't he?
That's right. Yes, he is.
Did you
Yeah.
see him around the rooms at all?
No, I didn't see him in the rooms. But Paolo Nutini, he was in the rooms at one
Yep,
stage. He's a
yep,
Scottish singer.
yep.
But I never seen Rod Stewart. And I have a few Protestant friends who are huge Rod Stewart fans, but they hate the fact that he's a Celtic supporter, and they call him Rod the Prod.
Rod the Prod. That's a good one. So tell us about, a lot of people who love football, haven't had the inside journey that you've had. So when you sign for a club like Celtic, what does that actually mean to somebody of your age at the time?
It's a dream come true.
Yeah.
It really is. It's amazing because Celtic and Rangers are two very strongly supported clubs in Northern Ireland, and so growing up a Celtic fan when I was younger, it's 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 the stuff dreams are made of. And when they come calling as a young player, it's very difficult to turn them down.
Mm.
So when I went there, that was amazing, and being around the club, being around the first team players, and there was also a strong Derry connection at the time because Paddy McCourt was there and Danny Lafferty was there. So
Hmm.
they were two players that were already from my hometown, who were already at the club. So no, it was a dream come true, and training with these guys, with guys you watch on the TV, is amazing. But you also can't get overawed. You can't look at these guys as stars. You have to look at them as fellow players, because that with that attitude you go on with, well, you have more ambition. You're not starstruck as such.
So tell us about the journey to become signed with a club like that. What actually happened? You say they come calling. What does that actually mean? Do you get an agent contact you, or how did that process actually work out?
Yeah, I had an agent in my hometown, and then I was in contact with an agent in Belfast, and I got spotted by a few teams and was doing trials, and I got offered a contract in England, and then that fell through. And so this particular agent in Belfast had a lot of contacts within Celtic, and so that's how he got me to Celtic, was because he was strongly influential with that club, and any young players who had talent, he would provide them to Celtic, and so that's how the connection came about. But most of all, it's one day you'll just get a phone call.
Yeah.
That's really how it works. A lot of the time is you'll get a phone call from someone, from maybe a scout or a team or an agent.
So tell me, when you're playing in Northern Ireland and you're running around there, is the goal, is the ambition to get to the Premier League? Is that kind of where you're aiming for? Is the ultimate?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. England is always seen as the ultimate place to play your football,
Mm.
and yeah, as a young person growing up, it was always my ambition.
Yep.
I think it is important to have a structure and really set your goals to where you want to go. I didn't really have that as a young player. I just had a vague idea that, I know what I want and I'm going to go for it. I knew it was the professional game, and ideally, I would want that to be in England. But as a young age, I started in Scotland, and then eventually more in Ireland.
Now, you had the opportunity to represent your country in the Northern Ireland schoolboys. Tell us about how that came about, and that must have been a very proud moment of your football journey as well.
Yeah, that was great. It was another stage of development. The Northern Ireland schoolboys, like what it says in the ton, is that people who are still in an education can represent Northern Ireland schoolboys. So at the time, I was still studying when all this football momentum started happening. So around 16, 17, and so I got to captain the Northern Ireland schoolboy team, and that was great. We played against uh, the Welsh schoolboys team, the English schoolboys team. We done a couple of trips to Jersey, which is in the Channel Island.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so no, that was brilliant to link up with the people who are at an elite level, at the schoolboy level.
And where did that lead to? Was there an opportunity from that to get recognised to play for the Northern Ireland team? Was that kind of the pathway that you're looking at?
Not really, because I always wanted to play for the Republic of Ireland, and
Mm-hmm.
this is where it gets political, right? Where a lot of people from a Catholic nationalist background identify more strongly with the Republic of Ireland,
Mm-hmm.
and then people from a Protestant Unionist background identify more strongly with the Northern Ireland national team. Um, so as a Catholic growing up, you kind of a lot of young Catholic players start playing for Northern Ireland in the youth level simply because geographically it makes more sense, and the quality of training is better. And then they have been, before they make their appearance in the Northern Ireland first team, they then defer to the Republic of Ireland because that's where their heart truly is. They identify more with that culture.
Right.
Um, and not all people, I'm not speaking for all people, but a lot of people do have that affinity, and they find singing God Save the Queen as an anthem for Northern Ireland, uh, they don't identify with that, and so that's why they defer to the Republic. It's a huge issue, and it's not really talked about, but um, I think a lot of it does come down to the anthem, and people aren't really willing to say that.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
I think that if there was an anthem that was representative of all the people in Northern Ireland, then you would get a lot more people from a nationalist background joining Northern Ireland. But yeah, it's a huge thing that does happen, and it's a big elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about. But then if you say that, if you want to take away the anthem that is currently there, then you will perhaps be seen as attacking, the identity of British people in Northern Ireland. So it's a contentious issue, but I think the anthem does have a lot of say in why young nationalists don't want to represent Northern Ireland.
Is Ireland more united today than ever, or less united than it was years ago?
I think more. No, I think more.
Mm.
Definitely. Yeah,
Mm.
I think it's really progressed. Look, it's a tough time now with COVID there, but absolutely compared to what it was like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it's a lot better. Like all sides of politics, you're going to have a lot of point scoring and saying what the politicians want to say to suit their own agenda or to stoke up fires or to rouse the crowd, whatever it may be. But it's definitely progressed. Northern Ireland is becoming a lot more multicultural, a lot more open-minded. And look, you're still going to have a lot of people on both sides of the divide who are stuck in the past and still want to stay with the bitterness and hatred that they have. Um, but I think we should just start again, just get all the hatred and just leave it behind because it's just doing no one any good and just completely start over. So yeah, it is progressing without a doubt.
Do you think it's a generational thing? A lot of places around the world where the older generation hold on to this anger and this division. Do you think that's also a case of what's happening in Ireland? Do you think a lot of the young people want a united Ireland and want to move forward?
No, I don't. I don't think a lot of young people want a united Ireland. I think people just want stability and peace and happiness now. Like maybe 20 years ago, a united Ireland in the nationalist community would have been at the forefront of people's minds. But people have just got tired of the fighting and tired of all the bitterness that's going around. So um, I think the majority of them are just looking to lead a good life, have an income, have a family, and that's it. But yes, you are still going to get the generational influence that passes down one bit of bitterness from father to son, mother to daughter. It's going to happen for sure.
I wanted to talk about one particular match that you played in today in a little bit of detail. I know that you've played in lots of extraordinary games throughout your career so far, and there's been lots of highlights, I'm sure. But I happened to spend some time watching the 2018 Irish Cup final. And I'm sure it's a game that brings a big smile to your face and also to your heart because it was a fantastic game between Coleraine and Cliftonville. You were playing for Coleraine, of course, and you were the man that scored the first goal in that game. Do you remember that as clear as it was yesterday, I'm sure?
Yeah, definitely. It was a great day. We just missed out on the league, I think the week before, and then we won the Irish Cup the next week. So it was a fantastic day, fantastic result, and it really brought Korean to a level where they were challenging for the league, and yeah, to score the first goal in that was great because it was my 20th goal of the season, and I targeted 20 goals, and it was my last opportunity to do that. So definitely a career highlight.
Now, when I watched the game, and in particular your goal that you scored, what stood out for me was the ball was passed back almost from the byline. You were waiting for it outside the box. You're quite a way outside the box, I must say, and you had a magnificent shot on goal. Did you, for any moment during that process, think, "Okay, I've got to nail this, and it's going to go in," or did you think that you had a bit of a chance of getting it in the goal at the time?
It's one of those situations where you don't actually think about it, and it becomes so natural. And those are the situations as a goal scorer that you thrive on, where you're not even conscious of it. It just happens because you've practiced it that many times. So like on the Friday, I would do my shooting practice. So because our games were on the Saturday, I wanted to feel fresh and have that shooting feeling in my mind and my body. Um, So no, it felt really natural. As soon as I had it, I knew it went in. But I'm very reluctant to talk about it because I don't like, I don't like dwelling on my past achievements. And because it was only 2 years ago, and I have a lot more goals on me left, I'm always like, no, I don't care. Maybe like when I'm retired, when I hang up my boots, then I'll look fondly. But right now, I don't really care.
Yeah.
I wanna,
Okay.
because I wanna score the next goal,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's the attitude I have. So yeah.
Okay, fair enough, but don't be too hard on yourself. You've got to celebrate the milestones along the way of the journey as well.
Yeah,
It's
but it
not
was
always.
2 years ago, Mark. It's over. It's done. Move on.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to let you forget about it because I want to talk more about that match because you scored the first goal and then a guy called Rory Donnelly got one back for Cliftonville and it was 1-1.
Yeah,
How was the feeling in the team in the game at that stage? Do you guys still believe that you could win the match?
I think so. I think we felt as if we were on top, despite Cliftonville equalising. Um, we felt somewhat in control, and especially because the previous year, in 2017, we got beat 3-0 in the same fixture in the cup final. So we had that previous experience was vital in staying calm and not letting the occasion get to us. So when they scored to make it one each, there was still a sense of composure around everyone. So I don't think I was that shocked that we won. Um, and especially because Cliftonville didn't have that experience the previous year. We just had that experience, which is so vital in winning anything in football. I think a lot of teams, before they do win something, they have to get a few defeats.
Yeah.
Liverpool are a typical example. They get beat in the Champions League, and then I think the following year they won it. So to get beat is always a stepping stone towards winning.
Yeah, it's a good adage to have in life in general. I think in terms of whether you're a business person and you've had a couple of failed startup companies along the way, it all teaches you a lot of things about how to be successful in the future. So I like what I'm hearing from you on that one. One thing I've always wanted to ask a footballer is when you've scored a goal and you're being surrounded and hugged and kissed by all your teammates and you're running back to the halfway line again to start over, how long does it take you personally to let go of that adulation of just scoring a goal to get your mind back in the game? Does it take you a few minutes to readjust again?
No, no. I think as soon as the game restarts from the center circle after you score, it's pretty quick. It's pretty automatic because you have to switch on. You have to. You can't be dwelling on it. So no, for me, it's pandemonium when it happens because you've got people grabbing you, screaming. You don't know really what's going on. Um, so it is. You enjoy that moment, and it's so because everyone's celebrating, and you don't even think because it's so happy. It's such a happy moment because all of your teammates throughout the week have strived for this one moment,
Yeah,
and then you're the person that gets that moment, but it's actually the culmination of the effort of the team. So the defenders who have, you know, mastered their striker, the midfielder who has mastered his opponent, and then the striker who scores. It's all those little things that add up, and that's what the celebration is. It's all the players having their own personal victory
yeah,
over the opposition.
yeah.
So whenever you do score, that's when people come together, and that's why they're so happy.
Okay, cool. Now, another thing I wanted to ask was with that celebration when you score a goal, I've watched over the years, obviously lots of football games and lots of goals being scored and teams rushing around each other to pat the guy on the back or bang him on the head or whatever. I'm a person that doesn't like someone coming into my personal space. So do you like that sort of stuff, or do you kind of turn around and go, leave me alone, get off me, stop hitting me and stuff like that?
I'm quite similar. I'm quite similar like that. But look, I just accept it. Most guys they love grabbing and pushing and shoving.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so I just let them do it to me just for a while. But I'm not. I'm very much similar to you. I'll just be like, okay, that's enough. Back off.
You'll be very familiar with the great Australian footballer Tim Cahill, who used to play for teams all over the world. But when he scored a goal, he always ran to the flag post in the corner, right? And he kind of did a little bit of a dance or something around that. And I always thought, yeah, he's running away from his teammates so he can get as far away as possible, so he doesn't have them jumping on his back and whatever. But it was just his way of celebrating a goal, wasn't it?
Yeah, he would run to the corner and he would do boxing. He would box the corner flag.
Yeah, that's it.
And I've actually done that before as well, because I would do boxing as well to stay fit and stay sharp.
Yeah.
And so I've done that celebration before. But he was an amazing player. He was like top class, and his timing in heading the ball was just incredible for someone so small.
Yeah.
Great player.
Always said that he was a player that was underrated on a global stage. I don't think people really recognised how good Tim Cahill really truly was as a forward.
Yeah, no, I agree. If he was English, I think he would be the top 10 in the world.
Yeah.
But because because he's Australian, maybe he doesn't get the credit that he deserves. But I've always seen him as a fantastic professional, a really, really good player.
Let's move on and talk about the Europa League, and that's a big deal in football as well. And for people that are watching in and listening in today that don't know too much about football, can you just explain to us what the Europa League is? How does one qualify to get to play in the Europa League as a team?
Yeah, so in the Europa League, to qualify for that competition, you need to finish either first or second in your domestic league, so the league in your country. So with Korean, we finished second and we won the Irish Cup. So through winning the Irish Cup or finishing second, you qualify for European competition, which means that you play other teams across Europe, anywhere around Europe, Eastern Europe, Scandinavia, the British Isles. So that's how the qualification process happens. So that's why it's such a prestigious competition, because it's the best playing against the best. And then above that, you have the Champions League, which would have been the games you went to see in Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
So with the Champions League, you have those who finish first in the leagues playing the Champions League, those who finished second playing the Europa League. So they're both the pinnacle of domestic competition.
Okay, cool. And you had the opportunity to play in both Norway and Serbia, games in those two places. How was it playing, a long way away? Well, Norway's not that far, but playing away from home in front of, different cultures and all the rest of it. How was that experience for you?
Yeah, they were both great experiences for different reasons. In Norway, we got thrashed 7-0.
Right.
We just weren't good enough. We played against Haugesund and they were just too far ahead of us at the time. But we got that taste of what it takes at that level, and you get to understand the technical ability of these players, the physicality of them. And then, just like the Irish Cup experience, it meant that the following year when we played in Serbia, we had previous experience and we did much better in Serbia. We drew 1 each in Serbia, and again, a different culture to Norway, different style of football, really hostile, really, I think we were supposed to play it at one stadium and some guy got stabbed at that stadium, so we needed to play somewhere else. So it's a tough place. Those guys are tough people. They're really strong, and you can sense it in the air when you go there. I'm not sure what the war was, but they've been through a lot of communism and things like that, and the buildings are very intimidating and old-fashioned. And then when we played the team, we actually done really well. We drew 1 each in Serbia, and then when they came to Northern Ireland, unfortunately, they beat us 2-1, I think. So, but unbelievable experience, and it improves you as a player and really enhances your game when you play in European competition.
Yeah. What were the sizes of the crowds that you were playing in front of in those days?
I think there was a limit to the one in Serbia because of the danger. There wasn't that many Northern Irish fans, I think there might have been like 50 or something who took the flight and came over.
Right.
But the Serbia fan would have been a few thousand.
Mm.
In Norway, maybe a few thousand as well.
Yeah.
But certainly not as much as the Irish Cup game, which was the highest attendance.
Yeah, right. So how many people has been the most you've played in front of before?
I would say it was the Irish Cup final. I'm going to say maybe 14,000, something like that was at that.
Mm.
Played in that, and after that, I played in the youth final with Celtic against Rangers. That was quite a big crowd, I think 8,000, something like that.
Mm.
So it's a good experience to have that, and not many people can say that they've played in front of those crowds. So it makes you feel less pressure when you play in smaller crowds. If you go back and play in front of maybe 2,000 people,
Mm.
it's not the same. You don't have the same atmosphere or the same pressure. But once you can handle the big crowds, then the little crowds are easy.
Are you a person that plays better in front of larger crowds? Did you find that energy and that adrenaline was easier for you to, become better in your own game?
Look, with me, it depends on my mindset and how my mental health is at the time. Off the pitch, a lot of it is to do with what's going on with me off the pitch, and this is something that I recognise very, very strongly. Look, some other players, it doesn't matter what's going on in their life, they
Mm.
can still perform. But I know if I have some sense of stability and focus and motivation and happiness and contentment off the pitch, then you're going to get a player who's very, very motivated to do well. So regardless if there's 100,000 and I'm not in a good headspace, the crowd, it doesn't matter to me. It could be nothing. It could be two people standing there. It
Mm.
doesn't really matter. But if I have that appreciation and I'm being constructive and I can see that how much it means to people to win a game, uh, then I'll perform fine. So the crowd doesn't make an impact. It's more my own mental state outside of the pitch that influences my performance.
Right. We see it in a lot of sports where sports psychiatry is a big thing, and you look at people like professional tennis players that have an army and entourage following them around and helping out in all different areas of their game and support. Do we see that with football players as well? Is sports psychology a thing that's been adopted by a lot of the clubs?
It is, yeah, it is. I know in Inverness we had a psychologist who we would have one-on-one meetings with once a week. So I think every Friday or something. Um, and that was good. That was great. It was a good professional, open-minded approach by the club. Um, and a lot of professional teams have someone in the corner who deals with the mental side of things. I know Liverpool and Jordan Henderson, the captain of Liverpool, he has worked with. I can't remember the guy's name, but Steve Peters, Dr. Steve Peters. He wrote the book, something about the monkey mind, keeping
Mm-hmm.
the monkey in the cage. So basically, that we're not that far evolved from being chimps, and you need to appreciate your chimp. You need to control him and make sure he's doing okay. You can't not acknowledge him because he is there. So if you can just channel that energy into something constructive instead of acting out, then it'll affect your performance on the pitch. So a lot of teams definitely use psychologists for sure.
Mm. So in 2019, you were signed up with Inverness Caledonian, right? And you had a journey there. What happened there, and how did you get to Australia from there?
Yeah, look, 2019 was a crazy year. I signed with Inverness in the January. I signed a 2.5 year contract, and after playing half a season, I left. I left Inverness, and it was it was a really difficult time because I wasn't playing as much football, and I was finishing off a nutrition degree. Flying back and forth between Scotland and Northern Ireland, and it was really unmanageable. And I was really depressed in Inverness because I was so unhappy with not playing, and I had the stress of the degree. I had no emotional stability to be a successful footballer, and it's something now that I look back on, I can see quite clearly. Um, So I came home from Inverness. I told the manager that I wanted to come home, and I cut my contract off early. A lot of it was because I wanted to sign for my hometown team because I thought I would be happier at home. And I got home and I signed for Derry City, and I regretted my decision as time went by. And I had a couple of arguments with the coaching staff, and that didn't help. But I think my attitude wasn't correct. I wasn't carrying myself very well. I should have been more helpful. I should have given more back to the club. And then I was just overwhelmed by negativity. And so also a big part of the reason why I was unhappy was because I worked so hard to get a move to the mainland, to Scotland or England. And then I returned home and I didn't stick to my career path. And anyway, all this stuff was happening, and I was very unhappy, and I didn't know what to do. I had two friends in Melbourne, and I needed to do something because my mental state was deteriorating very, very quickly, and I needed to leave because if I didn't leave, something drastic was going to happen. And I left and went to Australia, and it was the best thing I've ever done. Is come here because it's made me be more open. It's made me develop my personality. It's made me realize the mistakes that I've made in my career, and acknowledge that I haven't fulfilled my potential as a footballer, not because of my ability, but simply because of the decisions and my attitude that I made in 2019. So it was a very important year. 2019, I came to Australia and I was out of love with football. I didn't want to look at football. I didn't want to play football. I wanted nothing to do with it. And and yet 8 months previous, like I was on top of the world. I just signed with Inverness. I had a 2.5 year contract. I knew where I was going. So I went from having that mindset to having no direction when I came to Australia. So I ended up, working on building sites, doing what I could to survive, and just, working at just madness. And uh, it came to a stage where I sold my car and things before I came to Australia, so I would have some money to survive. And it came to a stage where I was running out of money. I was like, well, what am I going to do? I'm looking for work. I can't find enough. I can't find full-time employment. And then football teams here discovered that I was in Australia, in Melbourne, and so they started calling me. And I didn't really want to go because I had no love for it, but I needed the money, and so I was being influenced by this need to live and have shelter and have a home by my ability, but I didn't want my ability, but it was the only way I could make ends meet. So started off at this club, looked around different clubs, met a club and signed for them, but I had no love for the game, right? It was just, they were giving me some money, they were covering my rent, I needed it. And so with a guy like me, that's not a good situation to be in because I know that I need to have a love for what I'm doing. I need to have a purpose. If I'm just doing it for the money, then you're not going to get a good player. You're not going to get a good person. You're going to get someone that's just stuck in their own selfish mindset. So my attitude was bad. Then lockdown happened, and things just went from bad to worse from there.
So where are you at today? What's the is there a football journey left for you now?
Yeah, there is. I have found a very good club called Bulleen Lions. They are in NPL2, which is the second tier in Victoria. They are a very stable club. They have a lot of good people. They have a lot of potential, and I am super excited to start playing football for them.
Okay, good. And when does the season start?
It doesn't start until the first week in March, which is
Okay.
quite some time away. So we have, I'm doing a coaching role at the club, and we have a little pre-season before Christmas, but the proper pre-season will start in January to make sure that we are fit in March.
Right. Okay. And is the dream still there, Darren? Do you want to get back on the bigger stages? Is that the goal now? Have you got that hunger and drive back?
I do, yeah. Look, my goal now is to play in the A-League. I know that I have the ability to do it. I'm not fit enough yet to do it, but I've watched the games, I've seen the speed of play, and I know that I'm capable of playing at that level. So that is what I would like to do, and for me, that would be a miracle coming from the the nightmare of 2019 and moving here and losing my love for the game, but getting the love back. That would be a miracle for me to do that. So that's part of my story. That's my personal journey now, is to trust that I have the ability and to put in good. First of all, I've got to have a good year with bullying. You know, I've got to get fit, and I've got to repay the faith that they've shown in me, and I've got to perform, and I've got to score goals, and I've got to show people in Victoria this is a guy who can play at the highest level. Then I can think about the next step, but that's where I'm at in my journey right now.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to invite you back on the show sometime next year and give everybody an update on how you're going and how your goal scoring is going in the competition you're going to be playing in. So I'm going to put a bit of pressure on you here, a bit of accountability, and to follow through. And I want you to be the top goal scorer next year, mate, in that team. And I'm sure you can do that.
Done.
Okay.
They say that a lot in Australia. They say done. So I'll say done, Mark.
They do say that a lot. Look, we've rushed through our time today. I've really enjoyed having a chat to you. And I've got one final question I want to ask you, Darren, because there's one thing that annoys the hell out of me about football across the world, and that is every time that somebody takes a dive in the game and they're not even tackled, they're not even touched. What can be done about this? Does this annoy you as well? All these guys diving around for no reason?
It doesn't annoy me, and I'm going to say to you what I say to everyone who says this, and that is, you have to give the player credit, because you're in the crowd and you're so offended by this player who has took a dive but won a free kick. This player has done something very intelligent. He has fooled the referee, he has fooled his opponent, and he has got his team an advantage. So it's highly intelligent for players to do this. And what do you want them to do? Do you want them to be honest? Do you want them to give them, say, no, you know what, here, you take this back. So I give the player credit. I don't condone it. I don't advise it. I don't endorse it. I don't do it myself. But I give the player credit and I say, well done, because you have fooled everybody and you've fooled the most important person on the pitch, who's the referee.
I knew I shouldn't have asked to forward that question.
Yeah, you should have asked the defender, definitely. The defender would have been like, yeah, fucking, yeah. They shouldn't do it, assholes. Yeah, you should. You should definitely ask the defender.
Well, listen, Darren McCauley, it's been fantastic having you on the Global Sports Channel today. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day, telling us about your amazing journey from one side of the world to the other to follow your football dream. And we wish you all the very best. And I am going to get you back on the show next year, mate, because I want to hear how you're going. And I'm sure the audience do too, and seeing how many goals you're scoring in Victoria next year.
All right, Mark, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
There we are, folks. That was Darren McCauley speaking to me from Melbourne in Australia, a long way from home in Derry in Northern Ireland. And what a journey he's had. A young age professional footballer who's really been a journeyman and had his chances in places like the Europa League, but also played in some extremely good games over there in Europe. And now he's trying to re-find himself in Melbourne, Australia. It sounds like he's doing a pretty good job. So I'm very interested to follow Darren's journey next year in the Victorian football competition, and we'll keep you all posted with how he's going. Now, if you haven't joined the Global Sports Channel membership yet, you can head on to our website at globalsportschannel.com. Membership is currently free, so get in now and sign up, and you will be able to get lots of different benefits from being a member of the Global Sports Channel. Don't forget to connect with us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. And here on our YouTube channel, just press that subscribe button and hit the bell, and you'll be notified every time we post a video. So there we go. That's it for this particular episode. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day and being with us here on the Global Sports Channel. My name's Mark Philpott, and I will be back again very soon with another episode. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay positive, everyone. Bye for now.